My wife loves and sleeps with my dad. Chapter 1. The perfect life before it all fell apart. I always thought my life was perfect. A stable job, a beautiful wife, and a house that echoed with laughter rather than arguments. Madison and I had been married for 4 years, and in those years we had built a bond most couples envied. She was my best friend before she became my wife. There wasn't a single decision I made without her input. Life was simple, and I loved it that way. My relationship with my father, however, was the opposite. Dad was the kind of man who never stayed in one place for long. Growing up, he was the charming, smooth-talking guy who could sell sand in a desert. Women loved him. Men wanted to be him. But for me, he was the man who was always too busy for fatherhood. We had a falling out after my mother passed away, and for nearly a decade we barely spoke. That was until Madison, in her ever-hopeful way, pushed me to reconnect with him. "He's still your father, Jake. People change. Maybe he's regretting the time he lost with you," she said one evening. Her brown eyes filled with that persistent kindness that made it hard to say no to her. So, after much convincing, I called him. The conversation was awkward at first, but to my surprise, Dad sounded genuinely thrilled to hear from me. He had recently retired and moved to a small town not far from where we lived. We agreed to meet up for dinner at our place. The day of the dinner, Madison was unusually excited. She spent hours in the kitchen preparing his favorite dishes, stuff I hadn't even told her about. "I did my research," she winked when I asked how she knew. I didn't think much of it at the time. That was just Madison. She always went the extra mile for the people I cared about. When Dad finally arrived, he walked in like he owned the place. Same old confident grin, sharp suit, and that signature cologne that could announce his arrival from a mile away. Madison greeted him with a warm hug, and I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. For the first time, I thought maybe this is a new start. But what I didn't realize back then was that this dinner would change everything. Chapter 2. The growing chemistry. Over the next few weeks, Dad became a frequent guest in our home. First, it was nice. He and I would sit on the porch, catching up on the years we lost. Madison always made sure to be around, offering drinks, laughing at his stories, and occasionally tossing a glance my way as if to say, "See, he's not so bad." But slowly, things began to feel off. It started with the way they talked to each other. Deep, lingering conversations about life, dreams, regrets. Sometimes, I'd walk into the room and they'd be sitting just a little too close on the couch, their faces illuminated by shared laughter. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination. Madison was naturally friendly, and Dad had a way of charming people. But then came the touches, small, subtle, but intimate. A hand on her lower back as he passed by. A brush of fingers when handing her a glass. One evening, I came home early from work. The house was quiet, but their voices floated from the kitchen. I stood in the hallway, hidden from view, listening. "I never thought someone would actually understand me the way you do, Madison," Dad said, his tone softer than I'd ever heard. Her laugh was light, but there was a warmth to it that stung. "You'd be surprised, Robert. Sometimes it just takes the right person to bring it out." I walked in, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. They smiled at me as if nothing was out of the ordinary. But that night, as Madison lay beside me, I could feel the distance between us growing. Chapter 3. The messages. A few weeks later, the proof I had been dreading fell right into my hands. Madison had left her phone on the coffee table. A text notification popped up from Dad. "I can't stop thinking about last night. The way you looked at me." My chest tightened. My fingers trembled as I unlocked her phone and scrolled through their conversation. Flirty messages, late-night chats, and then the ones that hit like a dagger. "Jake doesn't get you like I do. I wish things were different. Maybe they can be." I sat there, numb, reading every word as the foundation of my life crumbled beneath me. That evening, I confronted Madison. She didn't deny the messages. She didn't even look surprised that I found them. "Jake, it's not what you think," she said, voice trembling. "We've connected, yes, But we haven't done anything physical. That was supposed to make me feel better? My wife, my best friend, emotionally entwined with my father? I'm your husband, Madison, I said, my voice cracking. How could you let this happen? Tears filled her eyes. I don't know. It just happened. He understands parts of me you never did. I tried to fix things. I suggested counseling, distance from Dad, anything. But Madison became distant, lost in her own thoughts, her smiles no longer reaching her eyes. Chapter 4. The Ultimate Betrayal. The night it all came crashing down was the night I decided to surprise Madison with flowers and an apology. I was tired of the tension, the cold silences. I thought maybe I could fight for us. I never imagined the scene I'd walk into. I unlocked the door quietly, wanting to catch her off guard with my surprise. The house was too quiet. As I walked up the stairs, the faint sound of whispers and soft laughter echoed from our bedroom. I froze outside the door. My heart pounded. I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming at me. But when I pushed the door open, the world I knew ended. There they were, Madison and my father, tangled together in my bed, lost in each other, so engrossed they didn't even notice me at first. The flowers slipped from my hands. Madison's eyes widened when she saw me, a gasp escaping her lips. Dad, however, didn't flinch. He sat up, unapologetic, a strange calmness in his expression. Jake, I didn't want you to find out like this, Madison whispered, covering herself with the sheets, her face flushed with guilt. Dad stood up, pulling on his shirt. Son, I won't lie to you. This wasn't planned, but feelings don't follow rules. You're sleeping with my wife, Dad. Planned or not, you crossed a line that can't be undone. I said, every word laced with a pain I couldn't contain. Madison's tears flowed freely. I'm so sorry, Jake. I never wanted to hurt you, but I'm in love with him. I staggered backward, as if the confession had physically hit me. You're in love with my father? Dad placed a hand on my shoulder, as if that gesture could ease the betrayal. Jake, love is uncontrollable. We didn't choose this. I shoved his hand away. You chose to disrespect me in my own home. For the first time, Dad looked regretful. Madison, on the other hand, looked broken. Chapter 5. Picking up the pieces. In the days that followed, I packed Madison's belongings. She didn't fight it. Neither of them did. They moved in together soon after, trying to justify their actions under the banner of real love. But for me, there was no justification. The first few weeks were a blur of anger, disbelief, and suffocating sadness. Friends tried to console me. Some called Dad every name under the sun. Others pitted Madison, claiming she was seduced by his charm. None of it mattered. The damage was done. What hurt the most was not just the betrayal but the collapse of two of the most important relationships in my life, simultaneously. But pain has a strange way of teaching you. Over time, I learned to accept that some people aren't meant to stay loyal, no matter how much you love them. I focused on myself, started therapy, traveled to places I had always postponed. Slowly, piece by piece, I built a new version of my life. Madison and Dad eventually moved to another city. I heard they got married. The old me would have been shattered by that news. But the person I became just shrugged. Betrayal breaks you, but it also clears out the people who don't deserve you. As I stood on my porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. I lost a wife and a father, but I found myself. The end.